What up, what up, what up? This is your boy Roy, and you are now tuned into Back to Center Podcast, the only podcast dedicated to life, love, and the millennial struggle. Happy Monday, ladies and gentlemen. I have not been around at all last week, but we are back with a very special Monday episode. Wasn't around this weekend either, but like I said, we are back in town, and as you already know, we got a lot of stuff to talk about. We're talking about cheating, talking about a crazy story about some guy being a sperm donor and then turning into a baby daddy, and a whole lot more. So you are tuned into a lot, but I want to say thank you so much for stopping by, and let's get into the show. Happy Monday, ladies and gentlemen. It is a special episode, not for anything in particular, only because I took some time off. I was not around at all last week, and I was not around this weekend either, but we are back in town, baby. I didn't go anywhere. I literally just took time off, simply because I wanted to. Only because I wanted to. And, you know, to be frank with you guys, if I had to be completely honest, I gotta say, not even on some like emotional shit, but I'm just saying from my perspective as a content creator, you know, sometimes I take a look at these analytics and I'm not gonna lie, I get a little discouraged. You know, I take a look at them and I'm like, damn, I'm not doing that well. Or sometimes I'm like, you know, this video is doing great, but overall, I wish the channel reflected those numbers a little bit differently. But this is not me trying to get on a soapbox. If anything, I want to take this moment to actually be a little motivational, you know, and not just for or from the perspective of a content creator, but honestly be a little motivational because, you know, at the end of the day, we all need it, right? Like we all need a little bit of motivation and we need that additional kick. And last week I made a video called "They Just Haven't Caught Up to Your Vision Yet," or something along those lines, I think. But moreover, the entire point of that video is simply for me to be a little more retrospective, not only for myself in making that piece, but more so for people out there, right? And I think for a lot of us, oftentimes we try to create things that, you know, might be ahead of our time, so to speak. Not like we're the next Galileo or, you know, the next Einstein, so to speak, but you know, we're working on things that, you know, the people around us just don't understand the concept yet, or they don't grasp how important it could be if applied correctly, right? And that's where you come in as the creator of said thing. And whether you're a content creator, a fitness professional, whatever the context might be, so long as you're working on something that people around you don't realize or understand yet, you know, that's gonna put a chip on your shoulder, right? And more or less, I also would say that this is also going to make you to some extent also discouraged for a little bit, right? So, you know, just to be human, that's where I found myself in the midst of my content creation. And I took a step back to kind of like, you know, try to better understand what's going on, what's going right, what's, you know, could be better and things of that nature. And, you know, I'm going to be real with y'all. I find myself at this crossroads of the kind of content I want to make because, you know, I'm just going to be completely transparent with a lot of the shit that I see within my niche. A lot of it just comes off as very, you know, for lack of a better term, not even trying to use the word or, you know, just tire it out, but, you know, it just comes off largely misogynistic to an extent. Listen, don't kill me in the comments if you disagree. Obviously, feel free to comment below. If you're listening to this on the podcast and you want to reach out, feel free to send us a DM. You can DM us at Back to Center Podcast. I'm not gonna lie, I haven't cracked that bitch open in so long, so I have no idea if it's even relevant still. But hey, if you got any grievances on what I'm about to say, then feel free to leave your thoughts wherever applicable. But anyway, a lot of it comes off as misogynistic to an extent. Not so much. I'm not going to be the one to say like it goes to the extreme. Obviously, we all have our opinions on these things, and obviously, I know the extreme of, you know, said, you know, considered vitriol, right? Like, I know the extent as far as some of these guys can go. I know that. What I want to say from a more balanced perspective, though, is that from my perspective, considering those things, I find it hard to want to make content within that niche. Not necessarily saying that I'm a part of it, but more so in the context of like from the perspective of the outsider looking on like dating, relationships, social dynamics, self-improvement, etc., etc. I don't want to make the kind of content that comes off like that because like that's not me. You know what I'm saying? Like that's not me. I don't hate women. I get along with women. You know, I have great relationships with women. You know, I'm not one of these guys who just, you know, lack social skills, but honestly, in most cases, that's not even in part to It's not even their fault. There's so much fucking nuance in this conversation. But the point of what I'm trying to say is, moving in a new direction with the channel itself, and making the podcast on a video format. I find myself sometimes having this crossroad of like, damn, should I just make the kind of content that people want to like rage bait react to, because that seems to be the kind of content that people want to watch. And listen, you can argue against this all you want, but if you find yourself constantly commenting or arguing back and forth with people on some piece of content that you find on a social platform, guess what, buddy? You are in the fucking social platform matrix, right? So from a content creator perspective, it's really about integrity and creativity, right? So I make this podcast in hopes that I come across in both those areas, both integrity, where we could look at these videos or just look at these stories or talk about topics and concepts and just talk about the nuance of all of them, and then find the silver lining in between them and apply them to our lives. And B, also creative enough to where it comes off on a platform that is replete with users, both creators and otherwise, but in a platform that is filled to the brim of just human beings in general. How do I stick out as a creator, but more so as an individual, right? Because I'm not just trying to be another creator that people listen to. Like, I really want to grow this to the aspect in which we are willing to have these conversations, not on some like Jubilee shit, but like we're willing to have these conversations in a broader, public, more tangible perspective, as opposed to just keeping all of this shit online. But that's just me. That's just me. That's just my gripe. Anyway, let's get into the content, baby. Let's talk a little bit more about motivation, and more specifically in the context of just being smooth and playing it cool. Because here we have a gentleman here. I don't know. I know he's a streamer based off what I'm seeing on over here in the corner. But more so, here we have a gentleman who is going through it with this girl. From what I can see, he's going through it with this girl. And as opposed to getting erratic and acting out like most of us do in these situations, he plays it cool. So I'm going to move myself out the way, and let's go ahead and take a look at this gentleman, and let's see how this young brother handles his business.
On my PC and shit? For sure. For sure. I don't know this person anymore. You can get out of here.
Okay. Just keep, like I said, keep your distance from her. She's been kept in the home.
Nah.
Okay. All right. We're gonna contact you there. Just try to keep things under control until we arrive. Okay.
Once again, y'all, this is not over no girl. Never over no female. On my life, this is never over no female. E-I-T-A-L-Y. Look up E-I-T.
Yeah.
Right here in the room.
Okay. Are you injured at all?
Nah, I'm good. I'm good.
Talk to him.
So basically, all this started earlier with a little argument. One thing turned to another. And that was that. Like, she's been antagonizing me. I just want her to leave, honestly. Throwing drinks at me and stuff. Like, I just want her removed from my house. This is my apartment. It all started from an argument. I asked her to fold some clothes. Then
Now this is how you handle a situation. This is how you handle a situation with a woman that you live with. Or more specifically, I guess in his case, an ex, right? Now, I'm going to be completely honest, and this might be a hot take to some people, but me personally speaking, I don't think it's a good idea that you should be living with your partner anyway. I know that sounds stupid. To some. That sounds stupid to some, but I just want to paint you a concept. Imagine the two of you had your own space, right? Like, okay, maybe this is a situation where maybe you live down the block from one another. That could work, right? Or maybe this is a situation where you two live in the same home, but it's built in a style to where the house is separated by a bridge, right? Like you've got your whole side and she's got her whole side, and y'all meet in the middle. You could chill at whoever's spot you want, and then at the end of it, you go back to your spot. Me personally speaking, I think that's ideal. That's something that I want to strive for. Anything less than those two situations, personally, I don't want. Personally, I don't want it. If you're gonna put me in the situation to where I have to decide whether if I want to have peace and an amicable relationship, or havoc and constantly having to work on a relationship, I'm good. You can keep that. You can keep that because I don't want that. I'm trying to look for the button, but yeah, I'm I'm good. You can keep that. And I only say that because when I think of relationships, right, and I just think of them in the context of how we normally see them to begin with. You know, people live with each other. You know, you have a family, this, that, and the third. Like, yes, the nuclear family is ideal, but is it really ideal if y'all are always arguing? And you can't tell me that this doesn't happen in every household because it always happens. And I'm not saying arguing alone is a marker for someone wanting to live separate from their significant other. But what I'm saying is, there's a lot of headaches you can easily avoid if you had your own space. I'm the type of person who doesn't like to be up his girl's ass. I just don't like doing that. You know, I like my own space. I like being able to see them on a weekly or bi-weekly basis. It saves me potential drama that we don't need to have. It saves me complacency. And, you know, to be quite honest, it gives me an opportunity to actually miss that person. Because what I realize is when you're constantly around somebody all fucking day, you're constantly around somebody all day, you're bound to have some issues with them. You're bound to have some issues with them. What's that quote? That quote people say, familiarity breeds contempt, or something like that, right? Something along those lines. The point of what I'm trying to say is, at the end of the day, if you are going to be with your partner all day, every day, what I'm telling you right now is that you are not going to have a good time. You're just not going to have a good time, dog. You know, you're going to find yourself in a situation you don't want to be in. And more specifically than that, you're going to find yourself in a situation where you resent your partner. And let's be real, dog. Let's be fucking real. Who wants to resent their partner? Excuse me. Now I'm playing music in the background. I'm out here fucking up. But no, seriously, let's be real. Who wants to resent their partner? You know? And I say all of that because at the end of the day, I may not be the type of person who promotes relationships, but we all want some sort of like companionship to an extent, right? Like minus having pets. Like we all want some sort of companionship. The best and most amicable way you can have that companionship for a long ass time if you play it right, and if you mutually have chemistry, but if you play it right, would be to have your own space. You know, otherwise you end up in situations like this with our next story. We got this woman here, which I mean, listen, say what you will, but man, I don't even know where to begin with something like this. And I do say that often because quite often I found myself, quite frankly, gobsmacked and just often confused. You know, I wonder if a lot of these cases or just some of the things these people say are just in an effort to go viral, which, I mean, if that's the case, then, you know, we could just go ahead and disregard at least 95% of what's on the internet. And I think that's the case, right? But I wouldn't be surprised if a majority of people thought this way. And listen, I'm not making no innuendos, right? Don't get no ideas. That's not what I'm doing. It's not what I'm doing at all. But what I'm saying is, and all I'm saying is, this shit don't make no sense. Listen, this woman says, cheat on that man. Cheat on your man, and he'll love you better. Fellas, I gotta ask before I play this video, is she correct? Is she correct? Anyway, let me take my head out the way, and let's get into it.
If you cheat on your dude, right, and he takes you back, y'all are locked in. Y'all are locked in for life. He will never leave you. That's a fact. And even sometimes, I might even go as far to say that you might have to cheat on him for him to really lock in. You know what I mean? I'm just saying. I'm not saying I do it. I'm just saying what I've noticed, my observations and shit like that.
Now, fellas, you heard her.
Damn, son, where'd you find this?
I mean, shit, both these sounds are applicable. I didn't even mean to hit the other one, but yo, I mean, honestly. Huh? What? I need to know who came up with this concept I need to know who came up with this concept because I know this big head goofy ass did not come up with this on her own. And I'm only throwing these ad hominems. I'm only throwing these ad hominems because, quite frankly, first of all, there is no rebuttal, right? It's not like she's gonna fucking answer me back. And if she did, that'd be fucking hilarious. In fact, I'd have her on live. In fact, if she gets back to me, I will do a live interview. I will do a live interview on this perspective. I mean, are y'all gonna watch? Probably not. But for the most part, basically what I'm trying to get at here is this is not only is this dumb, this is also a slap in the face to, I would say, millions of guys out here who are actually trying to do the right thing and not cheat on their woman. Listen, ladies, whether you agree or not, I'm going to be real with you here. Okay, maybe for like 55% of men, it's hard for them to cheat, right? Like, I've heard these stories where guys are in relationships and, they try to cheat on their woman by sliding into the DMs of other women and, they don't bag, which is which is fucking hilarious because personally I think if you're going to go out of your way to go ahead and at least try to approach a woman virtually and you DM them knowing damn well you have photos of your woman on your Instagram, my friend, you're an idiot. Why would you try that? Why would you try it? Listen, if you're really going to do it, and I'm not saying this as though I do it, right? But I'm just saying if you're really going to do it, the smartest way to go about this is to not have your woman on your Instagram. I don't post my shit, my personal shit, on my Instagram anyway, just to, avoid people. Because personally, I'm not a famous content creator, but, I be doing shit here and there. I be working for brands here and there, and I'll be damned if someone were to see me on a brand UGC piece of content or some modeling content and someone were to then approach me in the streets knowing my personal business. I'm not trying to get into that. So therefore, I don't post my business. But I would say, listen, if you're going to be the kind of guy who wants to go out there and try to get some play while you're in a relationship, the last thing you should be doing is making your relationship known. But let's be real. Let's honestly talk about this, guys. Do you think cheating would help your relationship? Now, believe it or not, there are some guys out there that do have that perspective, obviously, from the men's perspective. The whole high value trope of like, oh, high value men should be able to cheat on their women simply because, they're high fucking value. And, when I was 16, I would agree with that statement. But as a grown ass man now, I would also disagree with that statement. And I only say that for a couple of reasons. First of all, yes, it is hard being in a relationship and having that lust, that urge, right? That quote unquote itch. But that only comes down to, or that only becomes significant if you're the type of person who has no fucking discipline. And let's be real about it, guys. The time consumption, or the amount of time, that's a better way to put it. The amount of time it takes to even approach other women, get the Instagram, maybe you don't go on a date, she just comes over, whatever the case may be. That still takes some time. Listen, I'm no Casanova, but back in my single days, I could order that shit like it was on Seamless. Let me give myself the fucking buzzer because what am I saying? But no, I mean, honestly, back in my day, and I mean, I'm in a relationship now, so obviously, we're not out here doing that. But back in my day, I could order that shit like it was on Seamless. Now, someone would argue, oh, but are they bad? If you're referring to them as being Instagram baddies, no, my friend. Unfortunately, I live in reality, so I'm stuck with the women that are in my circumference. Thankfully for me, I live in an area where the women just so happen to be very attractive, and I'm thankful for that. But the point of what I'm trying to say here is this. I don't think men or women should be able to cheat in their relationships just because they think it's going to make the relationship better. That's not how this fucking works. A relationship is literally a job. That shit is a job, I used to argue at the fact of like, women wanting compensation for getting paid to be moms and shit. And listen, call me a simp all you want in the comments, but I kind of agree. Bro, parenthood is expensive. And also mentally taxing. Obviously on the father as well. But to be the person who's going to be wiping a baby's ass all day, feeding this motherfucker, playing with this motherfucker, putting him to sleep, waking him up, walking him. I mean, not like it's an animal, but You know what I mean? And obviously someone could say like, "Oh, that's your child." Obviously, motherfucker, I know it's our child, right? In theory, in this example here, but what I'm trying to get at is, yo, at the end of the day, that shit is it's work. Relationships are fucking work. Parenthood is work. All of that is work, and cheating is not the kind of work that's going to make it better. You want to make it better? Communicate. And I mean like truthful communication, not just this bullshit of like, you're being very superficial with how you feel. Particularly my dudes. A lot of guys out here don't want to tell their women how they feel. And I'm not saying you got to be, crying your eyes out, weeping on her lap and shit, on some, crying ass, oh, help me, woe is me. That's not what I'm saying. I'm not saying be apathetic. I'm not saying that whatsoever. But what I am saying is you have to be transparent to a degree with the person that you're constantly sleeping with. Does that not make sense? I mean, come on. You have to be. Cheating is not going to help it. And I keep going back to cheating just so y'all know I'm not, falling off course here. But all of these things coincide with one another. Cheating would bring on the lack of communication, or communication, the lack of it, would bring on cheating, vice versa. However you want to put it, regardless, that shit ain't the answer. And I'm not saying I'm like, self-righteous or holier than thou. I do be seeing some cheeks out in public, and, I don't have to be fucking descriptive about it, but, I be seeing some shit out in public, and I'm like, damn. mentally. Mentally. I'm not turning around and I'm like, damn, that's not what I'm doing. But that's the reality of it, because I'm a fucking human. I'm a human, and your boy be out here. Maybe sometimes he want to fight, maybe sometimes he doesn't. I don't know, but listen, that's not the point of what I'm trying to get at again. The goal, or just the point of what I'm saying here, is cheating ain't the option. And when push comes to shove, if you ever do find yourself in that situation, then you really need to reconsider and reevaluate, because, at the end of the day, once again, the idea that you're just going to be this cheater is, I don't know, that shit just don't make any sense to me, in my personal opinion. But, yo, we got another story here. And if you've made it this far, first of all, I want to say thank you so much. If you made it this far on YouTube, hey, and this is your first time being here, and I don't know why I said hey, but anyway, if this is your first time here, consider subscribing. We're on the road to 10K. I need you to be a part of this community and a part of this conversation as well. And listen, for all of y'all who watch my videos and may not jive with the podcast, listen, I am going to make like other videos as well. But, I'm fucking around with the podcast. I'm having fun, Going back to what I was saying earlier, I don't want to come across as just like every other fucking channel on this YouTube sphere. So, we're doing something a little bit different. Yeah, everyone's doing podcasts too, but I'm doing it my way, the Surge way. But anyway, if you're bumping this on podcast, make sure you like this and you subscribe to the podcast as well. I don't really know much about those kind of podcast analytics because, to be quite honest, I don't really check it that much. But anyway, I just want to thank you so much if you are tuning in. Ladies and gentlemen, we got our next story before we get into the thick of things. Today, we're going to be talking about the DK Metcalf story, and we're going to be talking about bullying. And just the civility of being a man. Like, what does manhood mean in terms of civility? And we're not going to highlight the case or completely cover it, because that's just not my sphere. I don't talk about those kind of things. And yes, there are some racial undertones that we will be discovering as well. But for the most part, we're just going to be talking about those things from a man perspective, because, that's what we do. But we do have another story here, and this story is a fucking doozy in my personal opinion. What do you do when you are a sperm donor turned baby daddy? Well, we've got the latest here. We've got Brett Farley revealing his untold details of his viral TikTok paternity fraud story. And listen, I gotta say, this is quite the interesting story, only because, it's one thing to get caught up in paternity fraud, just as someone who's dating, right? Like if you're doing like these one night stands and you're having casual intercourse, yeah, you might get caught up in some shit like this. But it's a whole nother story when you are, a person approaches you in a what one would say is like a calm manner, something normal people would do, and then spin something like this. Now, I read through it briefly. We're going to be paraphrasing a lot of this, and we'll also be playing the videos, but this is wild in my opinion. So anyway, let's start here at the beginning. So Brett Harley, just a normal 24-year-old dude, minding his business, living his life, just whatever. He was at a party when he stumbled onto Maria Nguyen at her birthday party. So he knew her beforehand. Quote, It was really just me being 24. I'm drunk and I'm going home with someone tonight. That's what he said of their initial one night stand. Now, as time went on, of course, fast forward a couple months, Maria then texts Brett out of nowhere asking him to be a sperm donor. Now, if you ask me personally, this is where I immediately say, hold the fuck on. This is where I say, hold the fuck on. Why are you asking me to be a sperm donor if we only smashed once? I don't know. That gives me red flag vibes, but for some reason, he decided it is what it is. I don't know why, but it is what it is. You let me know in the comments what you would do, though. I know some of y'all out here, though, will be so down bad. Y'all want to, y'all are into that breeding stuff. So y'all would probably do this. But anyway, so Maria texts Brett out of nowhere asking him to be a sperm donor. Not because they were in a relationship, and they weren't, or because they were close friends, and they weren't that either, but because she told him she's been single forever and all her friends were having kids. Now, again, I don't know why he would go ahead and decide and say, yeah, you know what? This is a good fucking idea. Let me go ahead and do this. Matter of fact, let's go ahead and play one of these videos from this goofy ass motherfucker doing some dumb shit like this.
I'm probably going to jail for this. I don't care. I've stayed quiet long enough. A few years ago, I agreed to be a sperm donor. She said she just wanted the baby and not a relationship. I was young and naive, and I trusted someone that I shouldn't have. When she told me she was pregnant, I congratulated her and moved to California. I thought that was the end of it. But then she started messaging my mom. She said she had no one, and she pressured us all to be at the birth. So we did. We were all at the birth. I signed the birth certificate, and I decided to be in the baby's life as a dad. I let her and the baby live in my Airbnb for free. I had to pay child support, and she took over $52,000 from me. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being a dad. She started asking me to be a family, and when I refused, she called me a deadbeat online, and I stayed silent throughout it all. 2.5 years later, I decided to take 2 DNA tests. Both of them said the same thing. I was not the father. When I shared the results, she said that I was lying and that we tampered with the test.
Before you all start believing his shit, some company with her DNA, that could have been anyone's DNA.
She filed a restraining order. A judge silenced me and made me remove all my posts, based on Maria's claim that I was actually the father. Here is the court-ordered DNA test that I had to request. And it confirmed again, I am not the father. And while I was silent, she kept going. She was changing dates on photos, spinning stories, manipulating people online. Some people believed her. But while she was doing that, I was uncovering the truth. Connections, manipulations, lies, and the truth about who the real father is. This is just the beginning of Maria's web of lies.
Now, ain't that some shit? Ain't that some shit? Now, again, I don't know why someone would go ahead and say, you know what? Let me go ahead and do this for you. Like, if I'm not close with you and we're not in a relationship and this was just a casual encounter, first of all, why do you still have my number? That's number one. I don't know why. Fellas, let me put you on to some game, please. Unless it's like an online, and matter of fact, fuck that. Even considering an online interaction, your number should never be a part of this equation. Like if you're meeting in person and this casual encounter escalates and moves forward, then, you know, you end up at your place or her place, whatever the case may be, respectively, and with consensual consent, right? I say consensual consent, but you know what I mean. With consent, right? Provided all those things happen, under no circumstances are you required to then leave your personal contact unless you so personally choose to do that. Now, again, me personally speaking, if I know it's a one night stand and, you know, I'm going to just be there to be there, like I'm here for a good time, not a long time, why would I leave my number? And same thing with online. Like if you're going to be meeting women online and you're going to be interacting on social dating platforms, the smartest thing, in my personal opinion, you should be doing is not interacting with them with your phone number until you have met this person and you feel as though you are confident enough in your due diligence to actually vet this person, because we all have heard the horror stories of people getting done up by women online, you know what I mean? So like that's not the way to go about it. Like I wouldn't just randomly give my number. And also, I'll put y'all onto some extra game. Y'all gonna have to pay me for this one, but let me put you onto some extra game. When it comes to your address, when it comes to your address, I don't mean this to be malicious. I'm not saying do this out of malicious intent, but what I'm saying is it's always better to give them a different address. Maybe not so much in your immediate proximity, right? Maybe like 3, 4 houses down, and like give clear instruction like, hey, before you end up on the doorstep, because you're going on a stranger's doorstep, but before you end up on the doorstep, send me a text or give me a call. And then listen, from that point, you can just go ahead and tell her like, hey, yeah, I'm actually down the block. And that's not in any offense to her. You're just protecting yourself. Like, what if it was a fucking setup? Now you just got a whole squad in front of your house with 2 9s, and it's a wrap for you. You got some 5.56s flying through your door. It's over. It's over. So do yourself a favor and play the game a little bit. But anyway, let's continue. Let's continue, gentlemen. So here we go. We got Brett. I'm just gonna go ahead and take my head out the way, but we got this gentleman Brett over here who decided he wanted to be a good fucking Samaritan by donating some nut. But anyway, so quote, I felt like I was doing something nice for somebody. See, Brett, that's your first motherfucking mistake. I don't know why the fuck you think you'd be wanting to do something nice for someone like that anyway. That doesn't make any fucking sense. But anyway, Brett admits, like, if someone asked you nicely for like, hey, can I borrow $20? I was like, yeah. Except this 20 favor involved unprotected sex, 2 weekends in a row, and the eventual news that Maria was pregnant. An event that prompted Brett's sarcastic but now prophetic reaction. Sick. Congrats. Yo, again, I don't know why you would do this. Like, why, brother? Why would you assume this is a good idea? I can't for the life of me sit here and think of a rational reason as to like, you know what? Maybe I did want a nut in this chick. But for what reason? Like, what do you get out of that? Like, yeah, sure, you spawned or sired a child that may or may not be yours, right? Like, and you may not have to take care of it. Okay, whoop-de-doo. But like at the same time, I don't know. That's just weird, man. That's weird, fam. Anyway, so from dad to donor without consent. That's crazy, dog. So what followed was slow but deliberate invasions of Brett's life. Quote, it felt like the stranger was trying to hijack my life, he tells Lucy. Maria started inserting herself into Brett's world, friending his family on Facebook, cozying up to his mother, and spinning a narrative that they were a happy little couple expecting a child together. She even asked Brett's mom to take care of the baby if anything ever happened to her. It was like someone doing identity fraud, but socially. Yo, that's wild. That's crazy. But anyway, despite the initial agreement that he wouldn't be involved beyond the donation, Brett's parents pushed him to reconsider. They said a little girl is going to grow up without a dad, he recalls. That guilt tripped him into flying home for the birth and eventually signing the birth certificate and an acknowledgement of paternity form that made him legally responsible, a decision he now calls his biggest mistake. You dumb motherfucker. Why would you do that? Sorry, I got the volume off.
Period. And then accidentally exposed herself on TikTok 3 years later. May 7th, 2021, Maria gets her birth control arm implant out. She's from my hometown and she was living in New Orleans at the time, so she could only be here on the weekends. So she came in town the next 2 weekends, May 14th and May 21st. We partied with my friends, she stayed over. She had someone take these pictures and then later tried to use them to prove we were in a relationship. We weren't. What was I supposed to say? Don't take a picture with me? And then I went to California. While I'm there, I posed with another girl, Whitney. She's only a friend, but Maria didn't know that. Maybe she got jealous, I don't know, but what she did next will never cease to amaze me. On June 6, 2021, Maria gets her period. She knows I didn't get her pregnant, and she also knows I'm about to move across the country. So she invites me to brunch, and she tells me she's pregnant, fully knowing that she's not. Then she starts drinking, like a lot. We then leave and go to another restaurant and meet up with my friend Dylan, and she also tells him that she's pregnant. Dylan and I think it's weird that she's drinking, but she insists it's okay. Here's the proof that this video is on June 6th.
Fuck this place, bring me to California.
Like, hey, you didn't get a lemon in you.
Oh, fuck, wrong way.
This video is dumb, but it shows two things. Maria was drinking, and I made it very clear that I was leaving. And that's important because that brunch, that's the last time I ever saw her until the week before the baby was born. Here's how we found out that she was on her period when she told me she was pregnant. Here's a photo she posted to TikTok to try to prove we were in a relationship. She changed the dates on the photos, but we'll get into that later. And then she posted this one. I then tell my girlfriend, who's a nurse, that she took that photo the day that she told me she was pregnant. And Hadley's like, hold up, there's no way. Let me see that ultrasound photo again. So we pull up the ultrasound that she sent my mom. The ultrasound was done on January 17th, 2022, and it showed that she was 32 weeks and 1 day. I've since learned that pregnancy is calculated from the first day of a woman's last menstrual period. And if we count back 32 weeks and 1 day from January 17th, 2022, we get June 6th, 2021, the day she told me she was pregnant. And we didn't sleep together that day either. Since she never saw me after that, that means that she knew from the beginning that I was never the father. Furthermore, here's proof that I'm in California the only weekend that she could have gotten pregnant. She trapped me before there was even a baby. And the crazy part, we probably would have never found out if she wouldn't have posted the photos. She exposed her own lie, and it only gets crazier from here.
What a story. That is incredible. I mean, listen, I'm not even like 3/4 of the way through the written part. And there's more videos, but that is wild, man. I mean, listen, at the end of the day, I could totally understand the wanting or the empathy one might have for wanting to take care of a child, but yo, you have to be smart about these things. Like, you can't go out of your way to then say, okay, I'm going to do something that's what I would deem somewhat irrational, right? Like, go ahead and sire a child because this woman just asked you nicely. Like, first of all, that's a dumb way to think to begin with. But, you know, you got to be smart about this kind of shit, gentlemen. Like, yo, I hope none of y'all are trying to be like this guy, because this was a dumb idea that he could have avoided by simply saying no. But, you know, he wanted to smash. This is what happens when you think with your small head and not your real head. Think, man, for real. So what followed was a slow but deliberate invasion into Brett's life. So, like he said it felt like a stranger. Now, despite the initial agreement that he wouldn't be involved beyond the donation, Brett's parents pushed him to reconsider. That we already covered. From there, things spiraled. Maria stayed in Brett's Airbnb for free, costing him roughly $30,000 in lost income, while also demanding thousands more in child support. He wired her $10,000 upfront and paid a $750 a month, even as he, excuse me, he wired her $10,000 upfront and paid $750 a month, even as she berated him over text. I hope you blimp die was quite the winner, apparently, from a text that she had sent him, and tried to gatekeep access to the baby depending on his compliance. She was withholding the baby and using her as a pawn, Brett says, which is, again, insane. It was textbook manipulation, and Brett admittedly and naively and eagerly wanting to do the right thing kept falling into the trap. Hold up, they got me in TikTok. Nah, we ain't playing on TikTok. Sorry, we're gonna play it on the we're gonna play it here.
Baby that I was only supposed to be a sperm donor for. July 12th, 2021, she confirms that she's actually pregnant. We only found that out later when she started posting on TikTok, but at that time she kept quiet. From July 22nd through July 26th, I was with my friend Whitney. She met my mom and she posted it on Facebook. Maria didn't know she was just a friend, and based on what happened next, I think she got jealous. Because not long after, Maria starts messaging my mom.
Hello?
Hey, Mama.
The night, I guess that we first met, I guess was that night at the half show. One of the first things after we introduced ourselves and sat down, I can honestly, remember her saying to me that she hoped that I didn't think that she took advantage of my son. And of course I gave a polite answer to that. She went on to discuss, and she mentioned, how I guess she was impressed with you to be so young and so successful at that age. I can remember her mentioning your house and all your toys.
From that point on, Maria started pulling my mom in deeper. She would ask for baby pictures of me, and she told her mom that baby's gonna look just like me. She made my mom feel important and needed, and when Maria told her that she had no one, my mom felt pressured to come to the birth.
She told me if something ever happens to her, I want you to raise the baby. And I just remember thinking that poor girl has no one.
By then, my family was in, they were planning to be at the birth, and I was about to be too. My mom tells me that Maria told her she has no one coming to the birth, no family, no support. She's scared and she really wants me to be there. So I booked the flight on February 23rd, 2022, and it's $677. And I sent Maria the screenshot. By this time, Maria has already had 2 separate baby showers and never posted anything about it. Not one bump photo, nothing. And then a few hours after I booked my ticket, and on the same day that I sent her the screenshot confirming I was going to be at the birth. And at 8.5 months pregnant, that is the first time she ever posts that she's pregnant. And she uses my last name. She waited until I was fully in, and then she told the world. She didn't just lie, she made sure the lie had backup. The day the baby was born, I was there, and I was the first person to ever hold the baby. And I just remember thinking, this is what it feels like to become a dad. I didn't care about anything else in that moment. My parents are there posting about how they're grandparents again. And then the nurse comes in and she brings in the forms for the birth certificate and the acknowledgement of paternity. I signed everything because I thought the baby was mine and Maria knew I would. After the birth, she scheduled a full-blown newborn photo shoot. She posed me holding the baby and they would jump in the photos. She had my dog in the photos too and had already ordered a bandana that said Big Brother. She shared the photos online, but I had no idea because I was already blocked on Facebook. She was posting pictures of me and the baby, making it look like we were this perfect little family. And while I'm across the country, she's messaging my childhood friends. She's asking my best friend Dylan and his girlfriend Megan to babysit, and they do. She starts asking my friends and family if they want to be the godparents. She didn't just ask 1 or 2 people, she told multiple friends they might be chosen. Literally, this is what my brother posted of me, the baby, and my friends. He joked, the godparents who didn't make the cut. And Maria liked the picture. At first, she kept things peaceful and calm. It's like she didn't want to risk pushing me away too fast. Once I was settled into this nice little world she created for me, that's when she started to tighten her grip. And that's when the real abuse begins. Part 5 coming tonight.
What do you get when you mix crazy with obsessive and just utterly naive? You get this. First of all, I'm going to be completely honest here. The mom's a dummy. I'm gonna be dead ass. The mom is a fucking dummy. And the reason why I say that, not for, malicious intent or anything of that nature, but I say she's a dummy simply because how could you actually go along with this? Like, how could you actually think this woman was dead ass? Honest, for real? I don't know. Maybe it's just my own personal nature and just how I think about things, but I would not give this woman the benefit of the doubt like that. Like, yo, until I see DNA tests confirming that this kid is mine, I want no qualms about this. I mean, like, yes, obviously there's an obvious there, like, oh, he's the sperm donor, of course. But still, at the same time, like, just because you think you get someone pregnant does not mean you're the fucking dad. And let's be completely honest here. If we're really talking about how this shit goes down, your soldiers could be mixed in with other soldiers. And your soldiers might get smoked. It might not even make it to the trophy. It might even get the cup. It may not even get the cup. So at this rate, it could be anybody's. It's a free for all in there. Especially if she's the type of to bounce around. Yeah, it's gonna be fucking Royal Rumble, ladies and gentlemen. But let's get back to this because the story's not over. In fact, it only gets worse from here. So let's continue. So we talked about the nurse and coming in and, doing the thing with the baby, whatever the case may be, him signing the papers, whatever. And then we talked about Maria staying in the Airbnb, getting him, costing him $30,000 fucking dollars. But there's more to this. So the plot twist came when Hadley, Brett's now girlfriend and a hospice nurse with a sharp mind, realized something was off, right? The baby's birth date didn't line up with Brett's timeline, and after crunching some of the numbers, she asked where he'd been during the conception window, and he wasn't even in the same state. So, 2 paternity tests later, confirming a 0% match, Brett's world simultaneously imploded and clarified. Quote, "I didn't believe it," he says. "I thought I was reading it wrong. Then I called my mom crying." And, personally speaking, I think that's the right move. Again, making sure the baby is tested because you want to ensure that that kid is yours. Because again, there's been a lot of dudes who have been caught up talking about, oh, this woman said I got her pregnant, so I was taking care of the baby. And then 30, 40 years down the line, they find out the kid's not even theirs. Bro, that's an L. That's a massive L. I don't know. Couldn't be me. I listen. I would have my stipulations, and personally speaking, I would always ensure that this kid was in fact mine. Like, there's no way you're gonna catch me with the, oh, shot up my club, so now you got to take care of this kid. Nah, I'm gonna need to see some real factual, actual papers stating that this kid has my French Haitian DNA. He's got my blood running, or him or her, whatever, has my blood running through her or them, whatever the fuck. That kid better be mine, DNA wise. Better be mine. That's all I'm saying. So now we have this guy grieving a daughter that was never his. So this wasn't just about being duped. It was about grieving a daughter he loved deeply, one who called him Dada, and who he held in his arms first at the hospital. Quote, I lost so many firsts I'll never get back, he says. It's something no parent should ever have to go through. Personally, the fact that he's calling himself a parent is fucking insane. The kid's not even yours, so I don't know why you're trying to run with that title, but hey, whatever. So Brett made the agonizing choice to cut ties for his emotional safety, and for the child's too. She was only 2.5. She probably won't remember me, unquote, he says quietly. But I'll never forget her. And that's some sad shit to say, but again, the kid ain't yours, so I don't know why you're complaining.
But his girlfriend's a little mastermind.
Those nurses who built giant platforms on TikTok from being such amazing, kind people, they were narcissists too. Specifically, Hadley.
Girlfriend, who was a nurse, tampered with the test result, and Nurse Hadley lost custody of all her children.
Okay, I want to take a moment to address the people saying I'm a clout chaser for addressing this again. This became an entirely different battle for me when they attacked Hadley. When I originally shared my story to clear my name, Maria, through her cousin, came online and spread horrible lies about Hadley. They said that she lost custody of her kids, that she was a felon, and that she tampered with the DNA test. None of those things are true, but so many people believed it. I watched the person I love cry while strangers made videos about her. They review bombed her book without even reading it, and despite all of that, she still stood by me. So yes, I came with a literal binder of receipts, and I'm going through it in order so they can't twist things again. Because it's one thing to hurt me, but it's a whole other thing when you're attacking the person that I love. Hadley and I met at the gym, and we went on our first date on March 20th, 2024. About a month later, I brought Hadley to lunch with my mom. My mom told us about Maria texting her recently. Maria was saying that I was selfish, that I wasn't allowed to see the baby anymore, and that she didn't want the baby to grow up like me. Hadley said she can't do that. There's a court order. Because Hadley knew the system, she'd already been through it herself. On June 8th, we spent the day with the baby, Hadley's kids, and some close friends. We played cornhole, we went to a birthday party, and even had dinner with friends that night. It was just a good day. But when Maria found out that the baby and I were at Hadley's house, she lost it. She texted my mom saying I'll get to play house with their daughter. It's an interesting choice of words considering how the story ends. Maria demanded that I call her immediately or she's going to call the police. I had to leave the baby with Hadley and her friend to go to another room so I could calm Maria down. Soon after, I go on a bachelor trip that was planned months in advance. While I'm gone, Maria jumps on Facebook and has a full-blown meltdown. She says I'm absent from the baby's life and that I skipped town on Father's Day. I had just seen the baby a few days ago and already had a flight booked to be back on Father's Day. But reality doesn't stand a chance when Maria opened social media. Her post was public, no matter how many times she claims it was only friends and family. This little globe icon says otherwise. There's no way it was only her 5,000 close friends and family. Hadley saw it, her family saw it, probably half the state saw it. She called me a deadbeat, she said that I put my dick in anything that walks, and accused me of shoving hot dogs down my throat for Instagram likes. Which honestly was pretty funny. But the real kicker, she ends it with, the truth is coming out and I'm not afraid to share it to the public anymore. She's all about freedom of speech until someone else starts talking. Anyways, she doesn't answer my calls or texts on Father's Day, so I don't get to see the baby. I'm not even shocked at this point. On June 20th, we head to the Bahamas for Hadley's brother's wedding. My parents were supposed to keep the baby for the weekend, but at the last moment, Maria asked if she could keep the baby instead. I say, sure, trying to keep the peace. Naturally, 2 seconds later, she's texting my mom. She's saying that I chose my girlfriend over my daughter, and now she's going back to court for full custody. My mom calls her out and says exactly what everybody else is thinking. You've micromanaged his every move, he's never bashed you publicly, and you've wished him dead more than once. And she was right. So it's June, and according to the court order, I'm supposed to have the baby for the whole month. But as usual, Maria was picking and choosing what rules apply. June 25th, this is what her family loves to twist. The infamous Lowe's incident. Here's what actually happened. The night before, on the phone, Maria told me that I could pick the baby up from school in the morning. So I did. We ran some errands, grabbed lunch, and then we went to Lowe's. While I'm there, I text her and ask if I can keep the baby overnight. She calls me immediately. Her response, not thanks, not sure. Is Hadley with you? I said yes, and instantly she flips. She says that she's coming to Lowe's right now. I was like, no, you're not gonna make a scene in Lowe's. I'll just drop Hadley off and then I'll bring her back to your house like we planned. I hang up and then I reiterate what I said on the phone through text. I put away my phone while I'm driving. I check my phone when I park at Hadley's house. Apparently, Maria's at Lowe's now. I had multiple missed calls from my dad. I call him back and he tells me that Maria has called him. And apparently, she was running up and down the aisles at Lowe's screaming that her daughter had been kidnapped. Oddly enough, her family doesn't deny this part. They just said that I didn't answer the phone for hours. The drive from Lowe's to Hadley's house is 17 minutes. I call Maria back and she starts making threats. Hadley tells me to hang up and text her because I need this in writing. That enrages Maria, but we'll get back to that soon. Regardless, I brought her back with no issue. On August 5th, Maria lets me see the baby again. A few days later, she comes inside Hadley's house. She meets Hadley's kids, she goes into their bedroom, she even played dolls with one of her daughters for a minute. Then, when she comes back to pick the baby up, all three of Hadley's kids are there, standing at the door, waiting by. And this is the same woman that went online and told people that Hadley lost custody of all of her kids. She knew that was a lie. She met the kids and stood in their home. That wasn't confusion, that was strategy. Maria knew that if she could convince people that Hadley was a terrible person, the attention would shift off of her, and the truth wouldn't matter anymore. She wasn't trying to defend herself. She was just trying to take Hadley down because she was helping me. And they hated her for it. They knew she had a platform. They knew that people online loved to cancel large creators, so they made her the target, because that was easier than answering for what they had done. On August 10th, I did the first DNA test. That video and the fallout after will be next. But for now, people have said that Maria only shared stuff privately on her Facebook to family and friends. That's just not true. But even if those posts were private, they weren't. Explain this. Maria and her friends were in Hadley's comment section months before I made a video. They were harassing her and spreading lies, trying to bait her into saying something back. Hadley didn't respond, she just deleted it and moved on. Meanwhile, they're in her comments saying that I was behind on child support and that she moved me into her house after only knowing me for 3 months. For the record, none of that is true. But they weren't interested in the facts. They were interested in turning the internet against her before I ever said one word. And I sat there with DNA results in my hand, knowing everything they were saying was a lie. And that's when it really hit me. This wasn't just about controlling me anymore. This was about making sure no one ever believed me. And if they had to ruin Hadley to do that, they didn't care. On October 8th, I finally posted the truth. I shared the DNA results, I told my story, and I kept it factual. And immediately, Maria's cousin Michelle jumped into Hadley's DMs. She said, "You're the problem. Brett was never this confident until you were in his ear. He never questioned anything before you." And there it was. It was never about the DNA test. It was never about co-parenting. They were just angry because I was not easy to control anymore. And Hadley? He was never the villain. They just hated that someone finally gave me the strength to stand up for myself. And what really blows my mind is how many creators took their side. Even after Michelle publicly posted that she ever saw Hadley, it was on site. She wasn't even hiding it. She was threatening violence, admitting to lying, and openly trying to destroy her. And instead of calling that out, these creators amplified it. They didn't ask any questions. They didn't look at any of the facts. They just picked up the pitchfork and joined in. So if you're one of those people who helped them do it, you didn't just get it wrong. You helped abusers keep their power. I'll be waiting for an apology.
What blows my mind is the fact that A, not only he went through this, but B, if you really, really think about it, he willingly went through this, like, willingly. I mean, I know I just said that, but no, seriously, like, he willingly went through this. All of this could have been avoided if he said no. Like, again, gentlemen, unless you're going to an actual, like, donating clinic, do not be willing to just donate your seed. Like, what sense does this make? I'm really at a loss for words here. Like, who says yes to that? Who's like, okay, you know what? Sure. Let's get this, like, undocumented, but, you know, perpetuously damaging idea to the test. You know what I mean? I don't know. It's just so, like, something just doesn't add up here. It just doesn't make any sense. Listen, I understand this guy was the quote-unquote victim, but something just doesn't make any sense here because, again, who just says yes to this? But anyway, we've covered all of that. Let's go ahead and wrap this up, right? So, again, we know that this wasn't just about being duped, and he had a daughter that he quote unquote loved, and he was grieving. Again, crazy because he decided he wanted to go ahead and be a stepdaddy anyway. But hey, that's another story for another day. But Maria didn't just scam Brett emotionally and financially. She leveraged the court system to silence him. And after the paternity test proved he wasn't the father, she then slapped him with a gag order. But Brett is done playing quiet, apparently. Quote, I was tired of being silent, he says. Narcissists want you to keep quiet. That's how they stay in control. Now, obviously, he's speaking out online, in interviews, and on the record because paternity fraud is real. It's devastating and it's still wildly under acknowledged in both legal frameworks and cultural conversations. And there is some merit to that, to some degree. The idea that paternity fraud is not something that is carefully scrutinized in our legal system is gobsmackingly disappointing, in my personal opinion, simply because it is very common. You think it's not common, but it's very common. People get their babies snatched up in the hospital, in, where the incubator, wherever they're holding their children, beyond the eyes of the parent, and, before preconception, children getting snatched up and switched out, babies, seed out here getting hijacked and inseminated voluntarily. It's the wild, wild west out here. So Brett's goal is to push for mandatory DNA testing at birth, not as an insult to women, but to prevent situations like this. Now, if a man is confident he's the father, he should have no problem proving it, he says. If a woman resists that idea, it's a red flag. And I wholeheartedly agree. Fellas, let me tell you something right now. Again, going back to this, what is the moral of this story? The moral of this story is before you have that child, or when you have that child, regardless of how you want to go about it, be sure you are the father. Obviously, use protection so you don't get anyone pregnant and to avoid STDs, right? Clearly. But more so than that, you want to ensure that you are the father because paternity fraud, we have now learned, and something you should have already known, but it's okay if you didn't, right? Especially if you don't have kids, you're not going to know this stuff. But as we have now learned, paternity fraud is not only easy, it's not something that's highly scrutinized in our legal system. So you can get caught up if you're not careful. So guys, I don't care if the woman's mad. I don't care if that's your soulmate. I don't care if that is the woman you have loved since you were a junior in high school and you had the acne out here looking like a freako. I don't care. Get the child tested because you could end up like Brett. Let me know what you think in the comments about this story because this one is a wild one. And once again, if you are tuned into this via podcast, wherever you are, let me know your thoughts, whether in the comments on a post or whatever the case may be. But that is a crazy ass story, man. Listen, the break is coming just in time because after reading all that and listening to all that, I gotta say, there's something to be said about not only paternity fraud, but just the general idea of women out here really just trying to get you because they want to get you. And that is the simplest way I could say it, but it's so profound, I think, in the way that I'm putting it because, at the end of the day, for some women, there's all types of women out there. And I'll say this before we go to break. There's all types of women out there, right? There's tons of flavors of women, personalities, characteristics, qualities, whatever the case may be. But what I'm saying is, it seems like they fall into a large majority where they are like passive with their attraction. Like they might actually if they're attracted to you, they might be in love with you, want a relationship with you, yada yada yada. But they're passive, right? They're not like obsessive, trying to destroy you because they can't have all of you, etc., etc. And then you have the other camp of women who are just absolutely insane and try to pull off shit like this. And personally speaking, it feels like there's a lot more of these crash out type of women than there are the calm, passive ones. And I'm not saying this like there's reform. I've got no hopes for humanity. Personally speaking, I think we're all going to hell in a handbasket, and it's just a slow degradation of society that we're all witnessing. I'm not saying that because of anyone's political or, moral stance. I'm not saying that at all. I'm just saying, all things considered, so many different opinions, we're not ever going to get along. That's just my point. Listen, we could try and fight for it all we want, but I just think that's the case. We're never going to get along. But anyway, what I would say is, at the end of the day, if you're going to be in a relationship or you want to be in a relationship or you're with a woman that you find interesting and you might want to take it to the next level, I don't care how long you've been together. I don't care how deep that relationship is. make sure you please get that baby tested. Get tested for STDs too, but make sure you get the baby tested. But anyway, we're gonna go to break. When we come back, we're talking about DK Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony. We're not gonna be talking about the case itself, but we're gonna be talking about masculinity in terms of civility and how we should be acting towards one another, because shit is getting out of hand here. But anyway, that's what we're gonna be talking about when we come back from the break. Don't go anywhere. This is Back to Center Podcast. This is your boy Serge, and you've been tuned in with the best. We'll be back, motherfuckers. We are back. We are back. What up? What up? What up? What up? Hopefully y'all didn't go anywhere. We are back. And we're back just in time for our closing segment. This is where I like to get personal with y'all. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and get into it now. Like I said, we're going to be talking about DK Metcalf and Carmelo Anthony. And listen, I just want to say this real quick before we get squared away here. Firstly, I'm not talking about this in the context of race, and I'm not talking about this in the context of the case itself. What I'm getting at here is we're talking about masculinity in regards to civility amongst one another, and we're going to be talking about, especially for men who look like me, i.e. skin color, we're going to be talking about bullying, and we're also going to be talking about racism, because that shit definitely does exist, and I don't give a fuck if you don't agree. So, without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it now. I've got some notes here, so I'll be looking over and to my right. But let's talk about this. So, again, briefly touching on the Metcalf-Anthony case. Now, we know what we know, you know what you know, I know what I know, whatever. But here's what I've learned. So, in the context of this case, Carmelo Anthony was sitting there minding his business. This dude, Metcalf, decided he wanted to go ahead and big up and bully this kid and try to get him the fuck out of there, out of the tent. Now, mind you, this tent was not on school ground, so he could have been there if he wanted to, and it was a track meet. So, typically, when you're at a track meet, everyone's like chilling and congregating anyway. The only time there's ever like separation and division and rivalry and all that shit is in football. Granted, that's where it's supposed to be. So, all things considered, this kid, Metcalf, decided to put his hands on Anthony. Anthony warned him. He said, if you put your hands on me again, watch what happens. Now, here's what I'm going to say. I'm going to say this later, but I'll continue this and then I'll just bring it up. But just remember this part. So, Metcalf decides, I'm going to go ahead and disregard what he said and then decide to put his hands on him. Well, unfortunately, and personally, I don't care how you feel about this, but he fucked around and he found out. Now, was he supposed to fuck around and find out in that regard? No. Here's what I want to highlight. Obviously, deleting someone is not okay. That's what I would say, right? And we all know this. Like, we're adults here. We're not dumb. We're not illiterate. We're capable of comprehending and understanding the ramifications of what's going on here. And clearly, and obviously, deleting someone is not okay. But what I would say is keep your fucking hands to yourself. And as men, we could all learn that lesson because, there's something to be said about this, because I'm not going to lie to y'all. One of my notes here, and I'm going to go ahead and just say it, racism is alive. And make no mistake about it. Racism is alive and well. And listen, I know there's a lot of people that try to have these like anti-black sentiments of like, oh, you should get over racism. First of all, I'm Caribbean, right? Not only that, I'm Haitian. So the people that were the oppressors, we fucking smoked. So I'm not worried about racism. I have zero qualms about it because I know a lot of you out here that claim that you are so tough are actually quite and really wouldn't do anything. So that's not what I'm worried about here. But what I'm getting at here is, to an extent, racism is certainly alive and well. And that has to be taken into context, because if it wasn't for Metcalf being raised in a household where those kind of anti-black sentiments were tolerated, he wouldn't feel the need to go ahead and put his hands on someone he doesn't even fucking know, or barely even knows, because I believe I've seen a photo of them at a party, but that's neither here nor there. Fellas, we got to be able to handle these differences and these challenges that we see with one another, or whatever the case may be, because I don't know how a lot of you racist white men think. I can't understand it. The idea that you hate me so much because of my skin color and what I look like, but yet are so obsessed with the people and what we are, is quite alarming in my personal opinion. But listen, that's not a conversation for today. Today we're talking about civility and how it relates to masculinity, right? So again, keep your fucking hands to yourself. And listen, there's going to be a lot of moments in life where you're going to run into people who want to have beef with you. Like sometimes when I'm in the gym, I run into people who have beef with me for no fucking reason. And I mean that. Like, to the degree at which, like, yo, they'll grill me, they'll stare at me, this, that, and the third, and look at me like I'm a problem. But it's like, yo, when I approach you and I ask you, dog, do you have an issue? For some reason, there's no issue. All of a sudden, it magically evaporates. And the grills and the way you were staring at me just all of a sudden turns into a smile. Why is that? That's kind of confusing. But what I'm really trying to get at here is, yo, at the end of the day, side note, I'm sinking into my chair. So my chair has been fucked up for a minute. But anyway, disregarding that. But yo, we have to take this shit into consideration, and we have to be real about these things, because at the end of the day, more stuff like this will continue to happen. I'm not saying Anthony's going to go out of his way to continue to delete motherfuckers. He's not a vigilante, right? But what I'm saying is, there's going to be more of this like false sense of bravado and like, yo, I'm going to be completely clear here while I try and fix my chair. There's a lot of you guys out here. Sorry, I'm trying to fix my chair. There's a lot of you guys out here. And I'm going to be specific when I say this. And I don't mean this in any malicious intent. But if the shoe fucking fits, motherfucker, wear it. There's a lot of you white men who now feel more emboldened because Trump is in office. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care about your political stance. My perspective is, if you're making less than $100,000, or even at this point at that, you're fucking poor. Therefore, you should be looking at this as a class war, not so much as a race war. But however, whatever floats your boat, whatever helps you sleep at night. What I'm trying to say here is this. Yo, you feel as though you have this like armor on you and you can act a certain way. Excuse me. And you can act a certain way when it comes to minorities, people of color, whatever the case may be, and almost try to like bully them out of certain areas because you don't like them, or you don't like what they look like, or you don't like their quote-unquote culture. The reality of it is, a lot of you out there have this weird, it's a dichotomy, right? It's cognitive dissonance in the sense of which you hate what we quote-unquote stand for in your perspective, but you're obsessed with the body, the mind, the art. You're obsessed with all of it. I don't care how many negative comments y'all want to leave down below either. I really don't give a fuck. But what I'm saying is true. You can't hate something so much you always talk about it. I just don't get that. I just don't get that. I don't understand that. And then when you see it, it's like automatically on site. Like, bro, you're not thinking clearly. You're not thinking clearly. And you probably never will. So there's no point even having the conversation, right? But yo, I think one thing all men, especially my black men, excuse me, one thing we all could learn, however, would be how to be resilient in the face of bullying and racism. And here's what I'll say in a general context, and then zero it in for men who look like me, right? And I have it in my notes here. Hold on, sorry. I'm looking for it. So really what I would say is, for all men, this is key, but especially for black men, thick thick skin, and an iron will is necessary in this world. Thick skin and an iron will is necessary in this world, because without it, you will succumb to the pressures of the outside world, people throwing or having remarks for you, treating you different, behaving in a way that, you may feel as though you feel like you're indifferent. Like, I'll give you an example. I went to Walgreens for fucking contact solution, and like, I know what I want, so I made a beeline straight for the aisle, right? And I had my hoodie on because it was raining. So yes, as a 6 foot, nearly 200-pound black man, I probably do fit this description for a lot of things. But anyway, I walk in there, going to Walgreens, I grab my shit, and as I'm turning around, I find a Walgreens clerk just standing there casually, just like watching me and observing me. So, me not trying to be defensive, right? I guess that's a good word for it. Me not trying to be defensive, I walk over and I was like, is something all right? I noticed you were staring in my direction. Is there something that I could possibly assist you with? And he looked at me and he said, no. I thought you needed help, so I figured, I'd make sure everything was all right. So I was like, so from the distance you were standing at, you assessed that I needed help, and instead of approaching me to ask me if I needed help, you decided to watch me. Now, mind you, this guy, I don't know, he had to be like 5'4", 5'5", so he's just like staring up at me. He's like, no, that's not. He was like, no, that's not what I meant. And I was like, oh, that's not what you meant, huh? And he was like, no. I was just, I just wanted to make sure that everything was okay. And then he tried to walk away, and I was like, excuse me, sir, get back here. I'm still talking to you. And he turns around. I'm like, sir, next time, the best way you could approach a situation like this is as a true gentleman. You can come over and politely ask me if I need help. Isn't that correct? And he's like, yeah, you're right. I'm sorry about that. I was like, it's okay. Next time, just be better for it. And he walked away. And then I went over to the counter, all pissed off and irate still. And, I had my moment with the clerk, who just so happened to be a Caucasian guy. But you want to know the craziest part? Racism and all the stereotypes have seeped into our society in such a deep level. The guy that was watching me was also a black man. How's that? How you like them motherfucking apples? The guy who was watching me was also black. So what does that say about our society at large? So the point of what I'm trying to say here is, you need thick skin. You need thick skin and an iron will in this world, because there are a lot of instances in life, especially for my black men, that will make you like sit back in the crib and just be like, what the fuck is life? Why am I alive? Why am I the color that I am? I'm going to be the first person to say it. There's been maybe 2 instances in my life where I really had went through some racial shit. I'll probably talk about it in another podcast episode, but like where I really went through some racial shit, and I had to sit in my home in silence and be like, why am I the color I am? Like, what is it about my color that results in so much like obscurity and persecution and outsiderness? Like, what is it about me that makes them treat me in such a manner without even knowing me? But again, a whole nother conversation. The topic of this is having an iron will in a thick mind. I know I inverted the saying, but it's all the same. You need to be strong out here in these streets, because unfortunately these streets are cold as shit, brothers. And let me be the first one to tell you, they will try to take any opportunity possible to put you in the dirt, not only figuratively, but literally. Let me be the first one to tell you. But anyway, that's enough of me yapping. This podcast has gone on way long enough. Listen, if you've been feeling anything I've been saying in any of these portions of the podcast, whatever the case may be, if you like what you're hearing, then do me a favor, do yourself a favor. Let's grow the community. We're on the road to 10K subscribers, and I want you to be a part of this community. So if you're on YouTube, hit the subscribe button. If you're listening to this on the podcast, Spotify, whatever playlist you're on, you found this accidentally, whatever the case may be, make sure you hit that follow button. If you're already followed and you're already subscribed, make sure you share this with the homie. Let them know you're listening to the podcast. We are back, baby. Next week's episode, we're going to be talking about supplement tier list and how to actually lose some fucking weight. You might notice my face, I'm a little puffy right now, but don't worry, we're going to be losing some weight. We're going to be getting nice and lean for the summer. And that's all the time I got for y'all today. So once again, thank you so much for chilling with your boy. You've been tuned in to Back to Center Podcast, and I'll catch you in the next one. Peace.